Good afternoon and happy Tuesday. Welcome into Crossing the Aisle. I am Lindsay, and the person sitting across from me is not Sean. He is in court today.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. And because we don't believe in all that transgender stuff around here. But it's my friend Leah. And so yesterday, Sean and I dove into the topic of school choice. That was a big hot topic during this past legislative session that just ended without a budget, by the way. And we heard a lot of opinions and a lot of comments concerning school choice, what it is, what it will do, why we shouldn't have it, why we should have. Actually, I would think we heard more of why we shouldn't have it from a lot of the haters out there. But I thought since it seemed like something you guys were interested in, I would ask Leah to come today because she is just a wealth of knowledge on the topic of school choice. And I love that she was able to be here. And I'm going to ask her to kind of describe or tell us about her background because I think a lot of people, Leah, are shocked or a little surprised when they find out that you were actually a teacher
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it seems like that's the group of people that have been pitted against school choice and education freedom in the state of Mississippi. So kind of tell us about that and how you came to be such an advocate for this topic.
So I know, when I speak to people, I know everything you do too, Lindsay, is for our kids, right? For
Right.
those souls in our four walls, right? But my journey began a lot longer um, before I had children. So I have been a classroom teacher. I have been in education for over 16 years. I have taught in public schools. I've taught in amazing public schools. I've taught in terrible public schools. I've also taught in Florida before I taught in Mississippi. So I have seen a wide range of spectrum of how public education should look and how it
Mhm.
can work. Um, but I've also taught in private schools and I've seen where, you know what, it's not about public, it's not about private, it's what works for that individual family.
Right.
And going through my education training or teacher ed program in college, I really started to see behind the curtain a little bit, you know, how a narrative is being spun.
Right.
And what I saw, I didn't agree with it, but as a young naive teacher, I didn't know really what was what. And fast forward to having children 16 years ago, and my children needing something different and needing a different setting. I really didn't know what school choice was.
Mhm.
And as an educator, you would think that all educators would know that.
Right.
Um, but I didn't. I didn't know what learning disabilities were. I didn't know what school choice was and how to navigate those systems. And I was always taught, it's public versus private, and you pick a side.
Mhm. Like it's a
And
war against the
yeah, and
two.
I wasn't okay with that. Like that's not okay.
Right.
Because what is the business of education? Teaching children. It's not an employment agency. It's not a corporate climbing ladder of
Mhm.
administrators, which it has turned
It's been
into.
yeah.
And but yeah, so my background as a teacher, I have taught in the classroom for many years, and I went back and got my master's degree in dyslexia therapy because my oldest son needed a dyslexia therapist.
Mhm. And
And
they're few and far between in the school systems.
well, especially in the Mississippi Delta,
Yeah.
and at the time that I went back to school, there wasn't one in the entire region. So my husband and I were looking at possibly relocating to Petal, Mississippi to be able to send our son to the 3D school because we didn't have an option. And by the grace of God, we stumbled upon the education savings accounts, the
Mhm.
ESA.
A lot of people don't know that they we even have those in Mississippi for certain or we don't have options in Mississippi for special needs
Yes,
students.
well, and why don't people know that?
Right.
Because I promise you the Department of Education we didn't advertise it. So I stumbled upon ESA. Empower Mississippi was the only organization that was really giving parents guidance on,
Mhm.
hey, you have other choices out there. You don't
Right.
have to be stuck. So we applied for it. My children, child at the time, Thomas, was diagnosed with dyslexia, severely dyslexic, and he needed another setting, and he needed dyslexia therapy as well. And he was at a great traditional public school that didn't allow me to come in and service him during the school day. So if you're out there and you've ever worked on sight words or spelling words with a child, it's a nightmare, isn't it, Lindsay?
Yes, yes, there's tears. No one wants to do that. The schoolwork, once they get home, they're tired, their
Yes.
brains are tired, they just wanna go outside and play.
Yes, and the last thing he wanted to do or needed to do was sit with his mama for 45 minutes a day to do dyslexia
Because it
therapy.
becomes that much more difficult for them to read and to look
Yes.
at words the right way.
Yes, yes. So we applied for ESA, we got it, pulled him, put him in a smaller private school that only thing that they offered differently academic wise was flexibility. They allowed me to come in and service him during the school day, and they allowed me to work one on one with the classroom teachers to really accommodate and customize what he needed to fill in those
But
gaps.
what if you weren't able to do that? What if it's a parent who has to work to provide for their family and they can't take off during the day to go into the classroom setting?
Exactly. What about those parents?
Right.
And that is why school choice is so important, and that really is how Mississippi Ready was born. So
Mhm.
Mississippi Ready is the parent voice for parent choice, and we are a one-stop shop, a platform to really guide and inform parents and families out there what options are out there, what they look like, how to navigate them, and what those options should look like in the future.
Mhm, how we can expand on those options. And I know, Mississippi Ready has partnered with Empower, right?
Yeah.
I know Grant's been on the station before with Clay and talked about school choice, Grant Calvin. He had a great article yesterday that came out in the Magnolia Tribune. Russ over there has been great advocate for school choice as well. Will Irving, I know
Yeah.
you've worked with him a good bit, and they've kind of partnered with you on
Yes.
helping get the word out
Yes.
about what school choice should look like in the state of Mississippi.
Yes.
So this past legislative session, well, let me back up. So while you're a teacher in Mississippi, we don't have a teachers union, right? Not a official teachers union,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
We do have an organization in Mississippi. And tell me kind of how that works. I've never been a teacher, so I don't really know how this certain organization, which is the parents, I'm not afraid to say their name, the Parents Campaign, which, by the way, is a joke to be called the Parents Campaign because I've said it many times and I'll continue to say, I'll say it. You don't have to. They are
Uh,
the most anti-parent organization there is
well,
out there.
I don't disagree, but I kind of feel like I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I feel like if you say the word or the name,
that
it
it
gives
kind
it
of like gives
life.
them
Or
light.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't, I don't focus on who and what. But in your teacher education programs, what happens or what happened to me, and it may not happen anymore, but I don't know, is that there's a lot of fear mongering going on at the basic foundation of becoming an educator.
Hmm.
And you are told that, hey, you need to join this professional organization to protect you from the evil parent that will sue you one day.
Right.
Well, as a naive 20-something-year-old, you're going to believe
Right.
what you're being told, right? So you sign up, you pay your little $10 a month for membership, or I don't know what it is
Because they're going
now.
to protect you whenever
Yes,
harm comes
when that
knocking on your door.
mean
Yeah.
mama comes in because she is mad at you, and you're a little old teacher and you can't afford legal counsel. Well, if something happens, you're employed by a school district who has legal counsel, which you don't know that as a 20-something-year-old, right?
Right.
So they tell you that, and you need to join this organization. Da da da. Well, through that, they have your district email. Through that, they come to your school to make sure that during in-service training, you go sign up to make sure you are a member and you get that deduction taken out of your check each month because you won't miss it. It's just a few dollars a month,
Where
right?
does that money go? Do we know where that money goes, Leah?
I'm assuming to salaries,
Gotcha.
or they say legal counsel,
Mhm.
whatever. But anyway, um, but the reality is in no free country, a good teacher will ever be unemployed, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, teachers are needed around the world,
Mhm.
and there's no place where a good teacher will ever be unemployed. But that fear mongering starts very, very early on in the
Mhm.
profession. And when you're out in a school, you have administrators and your district emails are being utilized. So guess what? Your tax dollars are being utilized to tell you how to vote as an
That's right.
educator. And then your administrators will tell you, hey, you don't need to be for this because it's bad. It's bad, bad, bad. And you might be unemployed if we have these things. Um,
And now there's a direct line to all teachers in the state.
Direct line.
Mhm.
I mean, and so I witnessed it as an educator, but also witnessed it. My husband ran for office several years ago, and He and these organizations directly campaigned against him using district emails in that district.
That should not be legal.
Well, I don't think it is, but it's who is gonna hold them accountable, right?
Right.
The parents,
The
right?
parents.
Yeah, the parents.
Mhm.
But anyway, so from an educator standpoint, that is kind of what goes on, and a lot of teachers are afraid to speak up and speak
Right.
out in fear, and rightfully so. I get it,
I saw
because
that during COVID. I mean, they were terrified to speak out about the mask, and I knew some of them who were so upset about it and who didn't agree with it at all, who didn't wanna get the COVID vaccine, and they were scared for their jobs. They were scared to
yes,
speak out.
yes, and that's not right.
It's not.
That's not right, and teachers should absolutely have a voice. And when I saw that, as an educator, as a professional, and then as a mama, I'm like, you know what? This isn't okay. And, I do believe, I'm a strong believer that God puts us on a journey, and all we can do is heed his call and try to do his work. And there's not a doubt in my mind that God has led me on this journey, has given me a voice, not only as a parent,
Mhm.
but as an educator.
Absolutely, and I'm thankful for that. It means so much more when you hear this coming from someone who's been in the trenches, who's been on the other side of the issue. And of course, as a mom, when you see something affect your child, there's nothing else like that that will ignite you to change, to make
Amen.
a change, and for the future, and for not only for your child, but for all children who
Hmm.
deserve better. I mean, Mississippi deserves the children of Mississippi deserve better. The parents of Mississippi deserve more options when it comes to education.
Yes, yes, and, at the end of the day, the Freddie children are gonna be fine. They're
Mhm.
fine, but now I am worried about the rest of the children in our state. Everybody should have all parents should have a voice. They should have a choice to educate their children how they see fit.
It's a fundamental right of the parent to direct the upbringing of their children as they see fit, whether that be religiously, morally, and education, when it comes to their health. And that is, these are unalienable rights given to us by our Creator. They're not given to us by government.
Right? Yes, and as a parent, and we want what's best for our children, and it shouldn't be and education should be simple. It should be something so simple
Right.
that, why do we have to fight for this?
It shouldn't be partisan, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. And, as far as like healthcare, we can go to any doctor that we want, right? We
Mhm.
can choose grocery shop food. We can choose where we buy our groceries. But the only place that we can't choose is education. And it doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Because it's not one size fits all.
No.
Children are all individual, they have individual needs, and they all learn differently.
Yes.
And that's what makes the world go round, that's what makes the world interesting. It'd be really boring if we were all the
Right?
same.
Yes. Yes. But when we talk about school choice, I like to talk about it in three buckets. I like to talk about it as public choice, private choice, and then we have charter schools. And then, yes, we have homeschool, but we're talking about the three bigger buckets of education, right?
Mhm.
All right. So, and I know you've talked about with your viewers or listeners about, what those buckets look like. So in public education right now, you do have public choice. And I think you talked about this yesterday,
Mhm.
how that works. So you can
Right.
go to any district in our state, but you have to get approval from your home district
Right.
and you have to have approval from the receiving district. Well, the reality is those home districts are holding children hostage.
They
They're
want
not.
that they get money, so much
Yes.
money per child.
Yes, and the notion or the narrative is like, that is public education dollars. No, that's my dollar. That's
Mhm.
your child's dollar. And thank goodness our funding formula is now like it's per pupil allocated, so we know like how much it costs to educate a child, and then that funding should absolutely follow
Which, by the
the
way, that
child.
took an act of Congress to get the funding formula rewritten 2 sessions ago.
Well, and it makes you question, like, why would anyone be against per pupil funding? Why would you be against this if you know what each child should need to be
Yeah.
educated? So
Yeah.
it makes you like, what are you trying to hide or what are you
Exactly.
trying to control? So this past session we were pushing
Hold that
for.
thought right there. Let's
Okay, I'm
take our
sorry.
first break,
Okay.
and then when we come back, let's talk about the bills we had
Okay.
and what happened throughout the legislative session, what got done, what didn't, and what we need to work on. So y'all stay with us. WYAB 103.9. We will be right back with Leah Ferretti of Mississippi Ready. Welcome back into Crossing the Aisle, where we are here with Leah Ferretti of Mississippi Ready.
It
And she,
rhymes.
it does. And she is telling us all about, let's see, I'm trying to fix our cameras. Telling us all about school choice and what it will do for Mississippi, what we need. So, Leah, this session, there were how many bills that were dealing with school choice did we have?
Well, 3 specifically that, I was looking at or we were looking at for Mississippi Ready. And the main one, we were talking about 3 buckets in the public school bucket and the portability bill is what we call it. And I kinda talked about how that works and how we already have portability, but in that bill, it would simply remove the home district hostage option, right? So if
Right.
a receiving district says, "Hey, we have room, we can accommodate, come on in," then just removing that restriction, and don't we want less government restrictions, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
at the end of the day, parents and voters, and they know what's best. So to remove that home hostage component, and this also allowed districts to remain autonomous.
Yeah.
They could, if a
They
child
set their own policy.
if a child has a behavior issue, no, we don't have to let you in. Um, and guys, and guess what? Usually behavior issues aren't the ones that are wanting a different option. It's not, oh, these bad kids. You open the floodgates and all these bad kids are gonna come in and ruin our school culture. That's
It's not what happens.
completely asinine.
Mhm.
Um, but and the reality is, I'm in a carpool line just like you. I see a lot of Hinds County tags, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of people from Canton. My kids are in Gluckstadt, just a stone's throw from Canton. I promise you, Canton children are already
In
in
Madison
in
schools.
Madison.
Right.
But the reality is that we if they can throw a football, we might turn our head and turn a
Yeah,
blind eye.
that's
We
right.
want the same opportunities for children who don't excel in football or on the court. We want those opportunities for all children. And I'm saying this as I'm the mother of a high school athlete and a middle school athlete, and open the floodgates is that's not what's happening. I mean, has it happened in Florida? No. Has it happened in Arizona, Arkansas, Louisiana? It hasn't happened in any of our
We're
states.
surrounded by states who have
Yes.
passed
And
school
that
choice
makes me think
legislation.
of, remember when Hurricane Katrina came and like the news coverage covered every other, well, it covered New Orleans, but Mississippi was the landmass in the middle.
Uh-huh.
It's like PTSD of Katrina again. I'm like, we're the landmass in the middle that
And nobody's paying attention.
because, we're just like, "You know what? We're gonna pump the brakes and sit back." And we really led the movement. We were one of the first states to pass an ESA, the Education Savings Account, and we really took charge, and we passed that, and then after that, we're like, "Hey, let's pump the brakes.
Mhm.
Let's see what the rest of the world's going to do," and they have surpassed us at light speed. So, um
Because while we have those ESAs, they're capped. So there's only so much funding that goes toward that and only so many children can receive that. So there's a wait list.
Yes. Ugh, I hate a wait list. So when you talk about ESA, Education Savings Account, this is a pot of money that comes from the, guess what? General fund. These are not these
Taxpayers.
are not funds coming from the education fund. It's not earmarked for education, or public education. It's for education savings account. So there's a certain pot of money that's set aside for families to apply for it. And the way it works is the Department of Education is the administrator of this program. You have to apply, you have to meet certain parameters. And also, what people don't realize, parents have to pay out of pocket for this. They've got skin in the game.
Mhm.
And they have to submit quarterly reports to be reimbursed back. And these are audited every quarter. Like, you can't say, "Hey, I want some new football cleats," and claim that on your ESA. Like, you have to turn in itemized receipts and
It has to be
proof,
legitimate that it was for
legitimate, that
school.
covers, tuition, therapies, textbooks.
Right.
And if you have a child with any type of special needs, guys, therapies are expensive.
Yes, they are.
Additional therapies are expensive, so our children are not only, in the classroom, and you think about educating them and what the cost of that is, they need other services.
Mhm.
Like, for example, dyslexia therapy. Um, Dyslexia therapy isn't covered under insurance.
Right.
So parents have to pay out of pocket, and private therapy is very,
It's
It
expensive.
hurts, and especially if their local school can't offer it.
Mhm.
What do parents do? So, ESA right now, yes, there is a wait list, and guess what? That wait list wasn't funded because we don't have a budget.
Right.
So we have a lot of parents that are in limbo. So they're gonna go probably into the summer, not knowing if they're approved, and
May have to put them in public school instead of doing what they've been doing, what's been working,
yes.
because now they're out of options.
Yes, in my family at one time, so when my oldest son got the ESA, God gives us things in multiples, and God gave me 3 dyslexic children. I should really buy a lottery ticket, because I'm that lucky. So, my middle child was put on the wait list, and he was waitlisted, so, we were in limbo of like, "Okay, how are we gonna afford private school tuition?" Because I knew that he needed the therapy that I was gonna give him.
I mean, these are real families. In fact, I think Empower has on their website families with their stories where you can go and see, like, these are real people this is happening to in the
Yes.
state of Mississippi who
Yes.
care deeply about their children, who can't find a way to fund the education that works best for them.
Yes, and these families are already paying taxes for education that's not fitting their children's needs.
Absolutely.
And I don't know why it has gotten so complicated or we've made it so complicated because it really isn't. It really
Shouldn't
isn't
be.
a complicated notion. So right now, so when we talk about private school choice, you talk about the ESA is the private school choice component primarily, and then you have the dyslexia scholarship. But that can only be used at a handful of approved schools. So I think it's about 11 schools that are approved that you can use the dyslexia scholarship. You can't use it anywhere else if those schools aren't approved, um, which is that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then there's a speech scholarship that you can apply for it too. So those are the private school choice options, and then we have charter schools, and charter schools are all around the nation.
Explain to the listeners what a charter school is. I think a lot of people get confused or don't really understand charter schools or what they do. So explain to us what a charter school is.
So, a charter school is a publicly funded school that doesn't have to run by the parameters of the local school district. So, right now, Mississippi, you can only have a charter school in a DNF district, right? And they are not governed by the local school district, which, if that district is failing, then they probably shouldn't be governed.
Right.
And
So if
they're
I wanted to open a charter school because I don't think that the district is doing a good job where I live,
Mhm.
I can't do that unless the school district has like a D or an F.
Unless they're failing, yes. And also, you can't just open it up like a check cashing place. Like, you have to go through a multi-year process, and
I'm sure it's expensive as well.
it's very expensive. So the people that do apply for this or are wanting to open up, charter schools, like, they've got skin in the game, number 1, and it just didn't happen fly by night.
Right.
And they're allowed to innovate. So, I don't know if any of your listeners have ever, been to a charter school. I would highly recommend it because they've got parent buy-in, grandparent buy-in, um, and they definitely fulfill a niche in a community that's needed.
Mhm.
And we definitely need more of those in our state. Right now we only have 2 handfuls of charter schools, and I promise you, we have areas across our state that are definitely needing that innovation.
Right, absolutely. Well, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, I want to talk about the roadblocks that we saw and why we think that's happening, why we think that it's not easy to get
Whew,
this done in Mississippi
I don't know
where
how much time do we have.
I know, I know, I know. But that's been a big deal. I mean, it's been hard. It's been difficult. We've every time we feel like we are getting somewhere, it's like one step forward and two steps back. And why is that happening here in Mississippi? And what can we do about it to change it in the future? I know that that's what you're working on tirelessly. So stay with us. If you have any questions for Leah, our phone line is 601-879-0002. And she, like I said, she is the wealth of knowledge on this topic. So if there's a question, she's the one that can answer it. So stay with us here on WYAB 103.9. We'll be right back with Leah Ferretti of Mississippi Ready. Welcome back into Crossing the Aisle. We are here with Leah Ferretti of Mississippi Ready, which is a pro school choice organization. And Leah, tell us why you think it's so hard to get this done in Mississippi. What happened during this session that was able to kill the school choice legislation that we had? I know you texted me one night from a PTO meeting and you had me fired up. I think I had tears coming out of my eyes. I was so angry. Tell us
Well,
what happened.
okay. Well, at that PTO meeting, you know, as a parent, and a teacher, I'm super involved. I'm in PTO. I'm in booster club. I'm class mom. I don't know how that happens, but because nobody else wants it, right? So
Right.
you do what you got to do because nobody else is going to do it.
Hmm.
Um, and I was at a PTO meeting, waiting, to see like what spring activities are going to be,
Things you
until
think that they would be talking about at a
yeah,
PTO meeting.
fundraisers, all the things. And our superintendent was there and he gave this wonderful presentation on our district. And you may have watched the video. I think it's on the district's website about just like the growth of Madison County. And I'm not originally from Madison. Like we've just moved
Hmm.
here 2 years ago. And we moved here because we were lucky enough and we could afford to move.
Right.
And we decided to move to Madison because
School,
the schools are
schools.
banging, man. Like they're
Hmm.
great.
Yeah.
And when we brought our kids to tour them, like they fell in love too with that
Hmm.
opportunity. So it was really like just makes you so proud of your district and how
Right.
far they've come and what they are doing and the quality education that our children are receiving. And at the end of it, he had a slideshow and this one pager. And if you don't know what a one pager is, it's just like a politically driven card that tells you political information. And on this
Hmm.
one pager, it said what Madison County Schools was for and what Madison County Schools was against
Politically.
politically. And the whole time I'm like, what is happening here?
Uh-huh.
And I very respectfully let him give his spiel on what Madison County was for. And at the end, he's like, "Do you have any questions?" And I'm like, "Well, here we go." So just raised my hand and said, "Mr. Poor, I respectfully disagree with you. But I am very disappointed in this." And I held it
Hmm.
up. I'm like, politicking and fear mongering does not belong in our schoolhouses,
No, absolutely not.
period. And, give me enough credit that I am an educated voter. I can figure out what to vote for and what not to vote for. I don't need
Hmm.
someone else telling me what
Right.
I should be for and what I should be against. But also what was insulting is that on that flyer it said, if we have school choice, it's going to ruin our school culture.
Right.
And
And property values.
we both are like, we all know what that means. When you talk
We know
about
what it
culture,
means.
you know what that means.
Exactly.
Um, that was extremely insulting. And then to tell me that my big house, whoever has a big old house in Madison County, in Lake Caroline or Ashbrook, that if you have school choice, it's going to lower your property value. Are you kidding me? You look at Arizona and Florida that have the highest Florida has the highest property values in the nation. School choice has not done anything at the
Right.
demise of property value. So it was those are lies.
So now not only are they using district emails, there's groups using district emails that are connected to educators to tell them what they should and for be against. Now we've got the school board and superintendent coming into PTO meetings to tell parents what they should be for and
Yes,
against
and giving me a one pager that they
with phone
probably
numbers.
yes, of all of our legislators who we needed to call and tell them that we're against this. And well, it's craziness. That should not happen in America. Like
It shouldn't.
that should not happen and it's happening in our backyard.
Right.
Um, so I know that, kind of like I get, and it made me assume that I guess, and I don't think it was Mr. Poor's wording. I think he was misguided. I think he was misled on that, honestly.
Hmm.
Because as a parent, I reached out to him and emailed, said, "Hey, can my husband and I come in and speak with you
Yeah.
about this? Let's have a meeting." Because, I am like, go straight to the horse,
Right.
have a conversation. Um,
That's the only way we are ever gonna change anything.
and man, and people are so scared just to have a you can
That's right.
disagree, but
That's
have a
right.
conversation. So we met with them, and we have so many similarities being from the Mississippi Delta, being Delta State grads. He was one of the first administrators at Germantown, and like, man, we are mavericks,
Yeah.
and how he understood where I was coming from. I think he probably regretted doing that.
He did remove it at the next PTO meeting he spoke
Yes.
at. He removed that part from the
Yes.
the one
Yes,
pager
and
he got.
I witnessed that too. So, a couple of weeks later, I was at a high school, or maybe it was the week of, I don't know. I've got 3 children. There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
So, I was at
I understand.
another PTO meeting, and that part was removed, which rightfully so.
Yeah.
And we should absolutely celebrate our schools and love our schools.
Yeah, this is not an attack on Madison County schools because
No.
my children have had phenomenal experiences there and some amazing, incredible educators, and I brag on them all the time. So this is definitely not an attack on
No.
them.
No.
This is just
This was just an unfortunate
yeah.
decision, I think, that was made, and I feel like and we all know where all that information came from because it sounded like certain organizations
Mhm.
said it verbatim.
Hashtag let me check with Nancy.
Uh, but I do feel like at the end of the day, we agreed, and there's some things we disagreed on, and that is okay.
That's right.
But the reality is school choice is here. It's here. It's not a matter of if anymore, it's when. It
Exactly.
is here, and, what I encourage is we all need to come to the table. We all need to come to the table and have a conversation. Um, Nobody should be spewing lies and misinformation. No organization should be doing that. No individual should be doing that. Get the full perspective of it. Get both sides of the
Mhm.
story. And I'm very fortunate that I have been on both sides. I've been on as a teacher, as a parent, and I see the bigger picture. And it's okay to disagree, but at the end of the day, parents deserve choice.
Yeah,
Parents
absolutely.
should absolutely have the freedom to choose the best education setting for their children without the red tape, without the hindrance, without having a PhD and whatever to try to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw at the Capitol during the legislative session, there wasn't much agreeing between the 2 chambers on anything, basically. But now, Speaker Jason White, who this was his second term, second session as speaker, and he has been an advocate for school choice and has made it very clear, along with Governor Tate Reeves, that they want school choice in Mississippi. They want broader
Yep.
school choice in Mississippi, giving parents more options. But for some reason, we couldn't get the Senate on board. So, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the Senate and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann are so strong against school choice?
I have a lot of theories. I think my primary theory, I don't think it's really a theory, it's a fact, is misinformation. I think it's misinformation out there to the constituency. Um, because I feel like negativity breeds negativity, right?
Mhm.
And that's more attractive to people is for something to be bad. And that's not the reality. That's not the reality for um for choice at
Mhm.
all. So I do think that misinformation, and miseducation, it all falls with education, right?
Right.
And I feel like that is one of the primary reasons. And I it's kind of like, I think we all agree on more than we disagree on,
Everyone wants kids to be educated. That's a given.
right? But it's a matter of I think both sides coming to the table and coming up with a compromise and agreeing on, what does Mississippi's education future look like? And that
There's
maybe that
been
just hasn't happened yet.
yeah, there's been this narrative that there's gonna be a mass exodus from public schools, and that JPD I mean, and right here, it's kind of like we're in this bubble where everyone looks at Jackson and they think JPD students are gonna spill over and take over Madison County schools and Rankin County schools, and it's just gonna be a disaster. They're gonna bring in crime and drugs, and that's kind of been the fear that they've put into the mind of parents.
Yeah.
So how do we change that? It's just educating
I
people.
love how you just said, they put fear in the mind of parents. My husband and I always talk about, propaganda and World War II and fear mongering and, how it worked for the Nazis, right? It
Right.
worked for them, scaring people and scaring parents. Um, but to say that all children in Jackson are bad? Come on now. Like,
Yeah.
ki kids aren't bad, some kids make bad choices, and kids that are shooting up schools or selling drugs we're talking about kids that need opportunity.
Mhm.
And, why are they making those choices? Maybe because they don't have an opportunity. Give
Right.
them a positive opportunity. Um, and
Give them a chance,
man, right? Like,
you
why
know?
wouldn't you want to give a kid a chance? Like, you just rather put them in prison? Do you know that how it costs about $30,000 to house an inmate compared to about $10,000 to educate a child?
Mhm.
That is bananas, bananas, and there's been studies done in Texas and Louisiana that, private prisons build or have projections to build prisons according to state reading scores, like 3rd grade gate. So,
Mhm.
if you can't learn to read on grade level beyond 3rd grade, you're probably gonna end up in prison. It's called the pre-K to prison pipeline, and that's a real thing, y'all. Like, it's
That's
real.
so sad.
Yeah. So, I we went just to help I can go down a rabbit hole, but education and prisons and statistics and all that. Um but no, that's not the case. I mean, you've got, y'all talked yesterday, you've got bad kids or kids that
Everywhere.
make bad decisions everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, and I said earlier, the reality is, guys, we've got Jackson kids in Madison schools already.
Shh, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. It's
They
gonna it's gonna be the end of the world if anyone knows that.
which is totally just bananas.
I went through some numbers yesterday too about how many school districts we have and how many assistant superintendents and their salaries, and it's
It's
insane.
disgusting.
It's terrible, and the parents don't know that. Nobody knows that unless you're in the weeds of it, but that's what
Yes,
I think we
yes.
need to get the message out that this is what's happening. This money we don't need all of this.
No, no. So, you talked about Florida yesterday.
Uh-huh.
That was my first state that I taught in was the state of Florida. I taught in Lee County, Florida. In 2007, they had 90,000 students in their school district, and which is the county. The whole county is the school district. They had 90,000 students, and when they hired me, they hired over 200 teachers that
They make it
year.
work. They make it work that way.
Yes, yes,
They make it
and
work beautifully, actually.
yes, and guess what? In Lee County, Florida, there's public schools, public school choice, private school choice, and
Absolutely.
charter schools. So parents have a plethora of options, and all those
And
options
they
are thriving.
and they have better outcomes,
Yes.
much better outcomes.
Yes.
Well, we're up against our last break, but stay with us. We'll be right back to wrap up our conversation on school choice with Leah Ferretti. Welcome back in. We only have a few seconds left. I'm going to have Leah back here for sure. There's so much more we wanted to talk about, but I want to let her be sure and tell you all where to find her and how she can help you with the school choice legislation and things that you need to be doing to get this done in Mississippi.
So go to our website, mississippiready.org, and you can sign up for our weekly emails and sign up for our text alerts. And also find us on social media. We are on all platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. So
Mississippi Ready.
Mississippi Ready.
See you tomorrow.